Hi, my name is Rain Emery. I'm a costumer and a cosplayer, and I use my fashion design degree to create sparkly dresses like this one. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to sew the new pattern that I made with Simplicity, which is S3160, and it is a fantasy ball gown with pockets, might I add. And it has fabric leaves on the skirt and on the bodice, which can also be interpreted as feathers. And for my Barbie fans, which I know you're out there, this dress back here that I'm making for the tutorial is inspired by Barbie of Swan Lake. This tutorial will be less focused on me and more about the process and helping you. If I tell you to do something and you have a better method that you'd prefer to do, go ahead and do it. I'm just here to guide you. Reminder that all seams are 5/8 of an inch unless otherwise stated. So let's get started. Here's Simplicity pattern 3160, and if you take a look on the back, you will find the size that you need for your project for whoever will be wearing this up here, and then right down here are the suggested fabrics. Here are the notions that you will need. Here are the amounts of fabrics that you will need based on sizes. This is the finished garment measurements for your reference if needed. So once you got that figured out, let's continue. We're going to start with the bodice, and here we have pattern 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the bodice front, bodice side back, and bodice back. So I cut 3 layers out of each one. So I have the fabric layer, and then I have the interlining, which is going to be the structure, and then I have the lining. I cut 2 out of each layer for these 3, and then 1 on fold for this one. Before we sew it all together, we are going to add some stay stitching 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. We're going to stitch the bottom edge of the center front here and in between the 2 points of the notches, and then the front top curve right here. And then for the side front on the bottom here, and 1 on the top here, and 1 along the stitching line here according to your size. And then you will also do the same here on the bodice side back, just at the stitching line on the pattern here. And then for the side front and the side back, after you have made this stitching line here, you are going to clip to but not through that point there, like that. And then we are going to sew side front to front, right sides together. We're going to pin it, match the notches, and sew all the way down, and do the same for the center back and side back, matching the notches and sewing down. You'll do this on the fabric layer, the interlining layer, and the lining layer. I have trimmed the curve of the center front and side front seam here, and I have pressed open all of it. And then for the side back and the back, I have clipped along the curves and just pressed it open so it can open nicely. And I've repeated that on the interlining and the lining as well. Next, we are going to sew the side seams together. So we're going to place the side front and center front piece, and right sides together, place the side back and back on top of it. And then we are going to pin all along the side, and then also on the arm seam right here, and then we are going to pin that and sew it down and repeat it on the other side, and then repeat this process for the interlining and lining layers as well. And then after that is sewn together, we are going to sew a 5/8 of an inch stitch all the way around the armhole. Before adding the 5/8 inch stitch around the armhole, make sure to press this seam and the side seam open. Now we have combined all of the seams together that we need to for now. We are going to pull fabric layer and the lining layer aside, and we are just going to focus on the interlining for now. We are going to add the boning, which will contribute to the structure. I'm going to flip the interlining layer over to have the wrong side up. On the center back, side back, and the side seams, these as well, we are going to stitch from the seam on each side away 3/8 of an inch. We are not going to do that on these 2 front seams. We're going to worry about those later. These 4 seams are good to go. Now we're going to focus on these 2 and the center front as well. I have 1-inch twill tape here. If you have 1-inch ribbon, that will work too. So I am going to position this on the center front seams all the way down, and I will cut it to match the length. And then I'm going to pin it and sew on each side 1/8 of an inch, and then down the center of the middle. Position the twill tape in the center of the seams as best as you can. And then after we do that, we are going to take more twill tape and pin it down the exact center front, and then stitch 1/8 of an inch on both sides, but not down the center. And this is what it looks like all pinned and so ready to take it to the sewing machine. Those have been sewn, and again, these two have a stitching line down the center, and this one does not. I will show you why. We are going to prepare the boning next, and for the center, we are using a 1/2 inch flat steel boning, and for the rest of the seams with boning channels ready to go, I am using a 1/4 inch spiral steel boning. We are going to measure the boning along the channel that it's going to be in, and then we're going to subtract 1 inch to 1.5 inches off of that amount, cut it, and then finish the boning with boning caps or whatever method you prefer. First, for the center front, I'm going to measure the flat steel boning. It's about that long, and then I'm gonna subtract 1 inch to 1.5 inches off of that, and I will cut it. And that's the only one that we'll need the flat steel boning for. And I'm gonna measure out this one. And then we're gonna create one more of these because this channel is mirrored on this side. And then we're just going to repeat that for all of them. This is all the boning that we have so far. So 2 for each seam and 1 for the center front. That is flat steel boning. And then I also have 2 extra that I made for the center back here, but we are not going to insert that until later. So we will just set these aside. And now we're gonna add the cups here. So we are just gonna remove the boning and just make sure that we know which boning channel it goes into. So I'm gonna set this up here, this up here. And now with the cups, we are going to place one down in the most curved part of the bodice. And then once I have that down, I'm going to pin it. And then I'm going to match this on the other side with this one. And then once you have these two pinned down, you're going to sew around the cup with a zigzag stitch, and you are going to avoid the boning channel. So you're going to go here, do a back stitch, come over here, start a stitch, and go all the way around, stop, back stitch, come over here, start a stitch. And, you know, you get what I mean, right? All right, that's pinned. So let's go and sew her down. Now that you've got those cups sewn in, go ahead and add the boning. All right, the boning's all in, and just make sure that the boning is centered in its channel so that there is a little bit of space below and a little bit of space above so we don't catch it when we sew around the bodice. Now take that interlining layer and flip it so right side is up, and then take the fabric layer, which is the layer that's going to be seen on the outside, and put it right side up, wrong side down onto the interlining layer, and then you are going to pin all the way around the raw edges. I have pinned all the way around the raw edge on the outside, and I also have pinned around the armhole. We are going to base stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way around the raw edges out here, and then we are going to baste 5/8 of an inch stitch around each armhole. All right, now that that is all sewn, we are going to set that aside to work on the leaves / feathers. I have pattern 9 here, which is the shorter leaf pattern, but not the shortest. So it's the second longest one. We cut out 15 altogether. So 5 of one color, which is contrast 1, 5 of contrast 2, and 5 of contrast 3, whatever 3 colors you would like. I just did 2 types of blue and a pink since we're going for more of a Barbie Swan Lake vibe here. The different blues aren't really distinguishable on camera, unfortunately, though. So now we're going to add the veins onto each one, and this is the fun part because you can apply this to other patterns and everything after you learn how to do this, which is not actually that hard. So now I'm going to take 2 out of this blue, 2 out of this pink, and 2 out of this blue. So we're going to have 6 altogether for the sleeves. I'm going to take one at a time. So since I'm working with organza, I can put it on top of the pattern and see the veins underneath. So I'm going to trace out each line onto this. I used a pencil. Also, don't be afraid if it's not perfect. If you want to make each vein different, go for it. The more organic and natural it looks, the better. When we go to the sewing machine, we are going to pinch each one. We're going to start with the curved vein first. We're going to do the center main vein at the very end to connect them all together. So we are going to start with one. It doesn't really matter which one. And you are going to start, I usually start from the center and fold it so that the marked line is in the center of the fold, and then you're gonna pin it or just freehand it. Sometimes I just freehand it and just go all the way to the end, and you're gonna stitch it about a 1/16 of an inch. Again, if it is a little bit not uniform, that just makes it more organic. Make sure that I know where that center point is so I don't go over it. And back stitch, of course. Make sure that I'm following the line all the way down, and then back stitch at a point like that. It's probably going to be a little bit stretched out, a little bit curved. We're going to take it to the iron afterwards, so don't worry about it. And I'm just going to repeat this on all of the veins all the way down, and then I'll come right back. We've got all those veins sewn. So now we are going to sew the center line, which I'm just gonna fold it in half, and I'm gonna start from the top. Oh, this looks kind of rough right now. And sew it all the way to the ending point. You can press it down in the center to help, but usually I just fold it in half and let fate decide what happens at that point. So yeah, let's go sew it down. A 1/16 of an inch, but if you make it like 1/8 of an inch, nobody's gonna know. Okay, she looks like she has been put through the ringer, but it's gonna work out. What I'm gonna do next is I'm going to take this over to the ironing board. I'm gonna flip it over so all the seams are face down, and then I'm just going to run my iron up and down it, trying to keep it as flat as possible, but not worrying about if all the seams are going the same way. It'll make sense, but if the veins look like they have a mind of their own and are going every which way, then it looks more organic, and that's what we want. Gotta go heat up my iron. Now that is starting to look like a leaf and or feather. So you can see the veins aren't like perfectly down one way. Like this one goes down and then up. This one goes down, up, which it looks cool. It almost actually looks like a little lightning strike too, which is kind of fun. So now we get to serge around the edges. So let's go do that. I am going to be using a serger to finish off the edges. You can use a rolled hem or a zigzag stitch, a shorter stitch length zigzag stitch. But this is already set up and it's only got 3 spools, so it's only 1 needle and it's a narrow hem. So let's do it. Also, I might mute this because my serger can be quite noisy. So I'm only taking off like 1/8 of an inch while going down. Of course, the size is always up to you. Okay, so I serged both sides and I also serged the top as well, but you don't actually need to for this one since it would be a part of the seam. So there's this little trick that I do to finish off the little tail of a serged edge. So I have a needle here with a bigger eye and I'm going to cut off the tail a little bit. And then I'm going to slip the needle in through that serge seam like that, kind of. Yeah, close enough. I'm going to slip the end of the tail through the eye of the needle, and then you are just going to slide it through like that. I'm going to cut off the extra thread, And there you go, you have a tip that will not fray. So this one is done and ready to go, and now you're going to repeat the same process eventually on all the leaves slash feathers that we have cut out. But just for now, we're just going to repeat this on all 6 of the sleeve leaves. All right, that took a minute. Oh my gosh. Now we have 6 sleeves here, so 2 of each color. And now we're going to split them up, so have 1 color on each sleeve. So this is the slightly darker blue. This is the pink. I will put that in the middle so it'll separate the 2 blues. This is the lighter blue, slightly lighter. And I'm just going to overlap the pink on top of them. Overlap the middle one about 1/4 of an inch and pin it onto one leaf and then onto the other one as well. And then you'll take this to the sewing machine and add 2 gathering stitches. I add 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch gathering stitches. So then it'll look like that. And then we're ready to move on to the next step of attaching the sleeve to the bodice. So next we are going to pin the sleeve on, right sides together. So vein side down, gather it, and we're going to place it on top of the armhole on the bodice, and then we will pin it. But the way that we're going to pin it, I'm going to bring out these patterns so I can show you. So the dots that the ends of the sleeve will land on are this one and this one. And the ones where the overlap is, so where the pink turns into blue, that will be these 2 dots. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And then once you have that pinned to look like this, you'll take this to the sewing machine and you will baste from each end of the leaves. There we go. She's looking more Barbie Swan Lake like. I'm going to just push this off to the side for now, and I'm going to pull out the lining. So what I did on the lining, I pressed the armhole seam 5/8 of an inch in at the basting stitch line, and I also clipped at the curves just to help it press easier. Let me show it to you a little bit more close up. That's what I've got, and I'm also going to trim it down to about 3/8 of an inch just so we don't have all of that added bulk. And then repeat on the other armhole. All right, now I'm gonna pull the bodice back out, and with the right side up, we are going to place the lining right side down, so they're right sides together, and then we're gonna pin at the back edge right here on both sides. All right, I pinned it on this side and the other side, and then I'm gonna take it to the sewing machine and stitch it. Both back seams are now stitched with the lining to the bodice and interlining layer, and I also added serging, but you do not have to do that. I just wanted to do that for the integrity of that seam. And so now we are going to flip it inside out so it looks something like that, and then we are going to press this seam, the back seam that we just sewed, so it lays flat like that. Now that each edge is pressed, I have also added pins to it because we are going to go in and add a 3/8 of an inch seam away from the pressed edge so we can create the boning channel for the boning pieces that we set aside earlier. Now go ahead and add that boning in to each boning channel. And then add a 3/8 inch stitch on both ends just to close it off and make the boning stay in place. Okay, now we're going to finish the armhole, which this might be a little bit tricky, but just bear with me, we'll get through it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something similar to the lining layer where we press the raw edge inside at the basting stitch that's like 5/8 of an inch, and we are going to clip the curve so it can lay inside nice and neatly like the lining layer. And then we're also going to trim the top here, and I like to trim at a 45-degree angle, especially with this bulk here with the gathering. The bodice and the inner lining has been pressed at the armhole, and I just pressed the sleeve out. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to combine the lining armhole with the interlining and fabric layer, and we are going to match it up at the seams, at the dots, and pin it. And then we are going to hand stitch it closed with whatever method you want to do. I'm probably just going to do a slip stitch. Well, the 2 corners here of the armhole may need extra reinforced stitching, so go ahead and add that if it needs it. It is a little bit tricky, but I believe in you. Once you've sewn the armholes and they're all ready to go, we're going to pin the rest of the raw edges of the lining to the fabric and interlining layer, and we're going to line it up on the seams and pin all the way along the bottom and all the way along the top, and then we're going to stitch away from the edge 3/8 of an inch. Come to say hello. Hi. Hi, sweetie. Now pull out pieces 6 and 7. These are the bias strips, which we are going to turn into bias binding, which is going to seal off the raw edges on the top and bottom of the bodice. So the way that I do it, you can follow the pattern instructions to do it if you do not have this, but I have this little 1/2 inch bias binding maker. So you feed it in and you'll take it to the iron and you'll slowly press as you pull it out. So it has 2 folds pressed into it, and once you have all of that pressed, then you will fold it in half and then you will have your bias binding. Another way, if you don't want to do that, is you can press this in half, and then once you press that in half, you can open it up and press this raw edge to the center where you just pressed the center line, and do the same on the other side like that. Press that and then fold it again. So you have another way to make bias binding. Both bias bindings are made, and I set aside number 7, so we're working on 6 right now, which is the upper part of the bodice. So I'm going to flip it over to have the inside facing up. So to attach the binding, my favorite way is to start on the inside and pin the binding to the raw edge, stitch in the groove, and then flip it over to the outside and then stitch close to the edge here. With the pattern instructions, it says to start on the outside. I like to start on the inside, but if you have a preference, you can go with either one. So I'm going to go ahead and start pinning. I'm going to match the center of the top bodice to the center of the binding. Pin that, and then I'm going to match the dots with the shoulder seams. Sometimes I cut a little bit extra on the ends of the bias bindings just to make sure I have enough for the overlap on the ends. So I'm just going to pin it with a little bit of an overlap there so I can fold it over itself and I'll have a nice neat edge. I have the top pinned, and I'm just going to go ahead and pin the bottom as well since we're here. I'm going to find the middle, and then I'm going to pin the dots at the side seams, so just underneath the armhole. So when pinning this, just note that the bias binding may be a little bit too long, so if you need to adjust the length, you are more than welcome to. Now we are going to stitch down this groove that we already made. After we sew the bias binding onto the inside, we're going to flip it around. Because we have already pressed it, it should just naturally fall over to the other side. Pin that all the way around. So we need this overlap here. This is just how I like to do it. Fold in and down, tucking in any of the raw edges, and then pin that. And it's an easy folded edge. Now you're just going to stitch close to the edge right here. She's looking pretty good, so let's move on to the next step. So I'm going to pull out pattern number 8. This is another leaf pattern, but you are going to cut 24 of these, I know, so 8 out of each color, and I already have most of them made already here, but let me show you how you're going to make them. You are going to draw out the veins from here onto the leaf pattern, and then you are going to stitch down each vein and then down the center vein last. So it'll look like that. So it's very similar to the other leaves that we did, just in smaller form, so you might need to have a little bit more patience. So after we've done that, this is a little bit different from the other leaves. So we have these little pleat marks. So I am going to pleat out like this, like that, and then we're gonna fold the other one towards the outside if we're having the right side looking up, like that. And then you will add a basting stitch along these pleats, just probably like 1/4 inch away. That's what I did. And then you will have this once you have it basted. So the next thing that you're going to do is you are going to finish all the edges. Again, I like to serge. I like to serge down this edge, then this edge, and this edge. And then once we've got that, it'll look something like this. And then I'm going to use that little needle trick that I showed you by slipping in the needle, slipping in this into the eye, and then pulling it through so it doesn't have any frayed edges, and it is good to go. So this is what it looks like all finished, and you will have to make 24 of these, which, whew, yeah, that took me a while to do. So if you have a favorite movie, show, podcast, audiobook, music to listen to, go ahead and put that on, and I will see you after you've made all of these. So I have quickly pinned on the bodice to a dress form because this will help out. And I have also traced out this line right here, which is a placement line, onto the bodice with just a simple removable chalk. That's the line that we are going to follow. So now we'll be able to put all of these onto the bodice. So how you'll start out is you will start pinning, decide on one color, and then alternate between the 3 colors. Again, I'm using 2 types of blue, but there is a very subtle difference, so you can't really tell on camera. But these 2 are different. I'm doing pink, blue number 1, blue number 2, pink, blue number 1, blue number 2, and there are 6 of these, so 2 of each color, and it's just following the top of the curve towards the shoulder seam. And then we're going to repeat this on the other side. I think I'm going to start out with blue number 2. I'm just going to underlap it because I want the pink to show through a little bit more. Then blue number 1. I'm just like sticking pins through. I'm not fully pinning it quite yet because if I need to make any alterations, I can do that just by slipping it out, and I can fully pin it when we're all done and about ready to hand sew. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we need 2 more. All right, and just check that those are where you want them. And now you'll be placing another 6 down here, also alternating colors. So I'm starting with blue number 2 first, then blue number 1, pink, blue number 2, blue number 1, pink. You know what I mean. And you don't have to follow the placement line. You can, but you can be more creative if you would like. I'm probably going to put it a little bit higher this time. Okay, so I went at it for quite some time just to make sure that everything was where I wanted it to be and that all of the extra spaces in the middle were covered up. I did pull it down a little bit more, and now we are going to hand stitch all of it down. So pull up your favorite movie, show, music, audiobook, you know the drill, and let's get to work on it. Now that we've got those leaves hand stitched on to the bodice, we are going to grab any trim you like, really. You can do 1.5 inch trim. I'm gonna do a little bit of smaller trim this time. I got this from the LA Fashion District and it just looks so pretty and I think it matches really well. So what we're gonna do is we are going to, well, I'm gonna first get over to the other side, hold on. We are going to start pinning it, starting from here and going all the way around the underbust to here. And I'm just going to fold over one edge and then start pinning. You can overlap this however much you'd like on top of the leaves. I might overlap it a little bit lower because I didn't quite meet the placement line. I'm going to take a needle and thread again and hand stitch this down. All right, and she is good to go. Look how pretty. We are going to add some chains and a centerpiece, and this is actually kind of fun because it kind of pulls it all together. So what I've decided for the centerpiece is this little guy right here, and then I have this chain. I am going to cut 4 pieces. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 7 inches and 2 pieces of 6.5 inches. So this is a 7-inch one, another 7-inch, 6.5, and another 6.5. I have some jump rings here, so I am first going to open this up. I'm going to slide on one 7-inch chain and then one 6.5 chain. This has a really nice opening right here, so I'm just going to use that, put it in, and then close it off. Okay, so we got one. Let's do it on the other side. Okay, we got those, and then I'm going to attach the ends of these with another jump ring and then close it off as well, and then repeat. Whoops. Repeat on the other side. Hello, it's Rain from the future. So I just wanted to point out a mistake that I made about the chains here on the dress. So instead of connecting the shorter chain here with the longer chain, which you are more than welcome to do, but if you want it to look like it does on the pattern envelope, go ahead and measure from this end on the long chain 3 inches and mark that. And then you're gonna take the end of the shorter chain and connect it to that mark right there. So now it'll end up looking like this instead of like that. So it looks kind of like wings, and I think that's super pretty. So now that is ready to go, and we can go ahead and hand stitch on this centerpiece right here, and then hand stitch on this jump ring and make sure it's closed enough so the thread doesn't slip through to the end here, and you will have a cute little dangling detail, which is super fun. Also, before sewing it on, I forgot to mention, make sure that the chain works out for your size. This is the pattern for my size, so 6.5 inch and 7-inch works out for me. So just measure it, and if you want to add more, if you want to add less, go for it. This is your magical design. So now we're going to set in the grommets. I have added the marks from the center back pattern for the grommets. I have a leather hole puncher, which will help with all of the layers. I have the grommets right here. I have this grommet machine, and we are ready to go. And we'll go ahead and start with this side. All right, there we go. So one of the last steps to making the bodice is adding the underlap, and I have cut one out of the fabric, one out of inner lining, and one out of lining, and I have already basted the fabric and the interlining layers together already, just around the edges. And so now I am going to take the lining and place it right sides together, and then I'm going to pin all the way around. But when I sew it, I'm going to leave an opening right here so that I can pull it inside out. Now that I've sewn that and left this opening right here, and I also clipped the corners, I am going to flip it inside out like that, and then we are going to take this to the iron and press out the edges, and then once we have done that, we are going to slip stitch this opening closed. Now that we have this finished and ready to go, we are going to attach it to this side of the bodice, and we're going to line it up with the dots right here and then pin all the way down, and then we're going to slip stitch all the way down. All right, now I'm going to flip this around to the back. Look at that. And now I have 125-inch ribbon here. You can use whatever cording that you want for this. And then I burned the edges. I cut it off at an angle so it's easier to lace up. And so I'm just going to go in with a crisscross pattern, make sure it's even. Oops. And there you have it. You are done with the bodice. Good job. Now, if you want to add anything else, like any embellishments, any more trims, you are more than welcome to. I actually might add some extra trim to the bottom here where the bias binding is, just because it pulls it all together with this. So I'm going to just hand stitch that on, and next up is the skirt. All right, now onto the skirt, and we have, before it drops, we have pattern 11 and 12 here. 11 is the skirt front, that is cut on fold. 12 is skirt back, which is not cut on fold. And I'm just gonna set the pattern pieces aside because they are so big and we don't need them right now. So we have the skirt front and back cut out of this fabric, which is lovely. Just a disclaimer, this is not gonna be part of the pattern. This is just because Odette has this tulle overlay on her dress from Barbie Swan Lake. So I will be adding a blue tulle overlay, but just ignore this if you are following the main pattern itself. Just pretend it's not there. Let's get started on the pockets. Okay, this is the top of the skirt and the bottom of the skirt is down here. And I'm going to be taking one of the pocket pieces here. We are going to line these two dots up with the two dots that you transferred from the skirt pattern right here. And we're going to do that right sides together, matching raw edges and also matching notches. And now we are going to stitch from the top of the pocket down to the bottom of the pocket, 3/8 of an inch. All right, I have done that. I have stitched 3/8 of an inch, and then I have pressed the pocket out. So now here I will understitch right along this edge on the pocket itself. So after that's done, you're going to repeat this on all of the other sides. So there's 3 more. Okay, now I have the front skirt here, and I'm going to grab one of the skirt backs and make sure it can go right sides to right sides matching. So I'm going to place the side seam down on top of the other side seam, right sides together. And I'm going to start matching it up and pinning it all the way down, but not pinning right here because we're not going to sew right here. Okay, so I pinned all the way around the pocket and all the way to the bottom. And then we are going to stitch 5/8 of an inch from here around the pocket, back up and all the way down. And we're going to repeat that on the other side. It is all sewn now and it's actually looking like a skirt. If you take a look on the inside, it's a pocket, woohoo! And now we're going to finish the edges however way that you want. I'm going to serge it, you can zigzag stitch it, and then I'm going to press it. So I'm going to serge the entire seam. I'm going to press it towards the front so the pocket will lay towards the front. Okay, for this next part, I'm taking the skirt to the ground so you can see it a little bit better than just having it on the table. And look how nice those pockets look. They look so invisible. Yay! Okay, so now we are gonna pull out, oh, almost lost one. Rest of the shorter leaves, pattern 9, and all of the long leaves on pattern 10. There are 9 on here and 9 on here, so 9 on here left. So these are the ones that we used for the sleeve, but now we are pulling them back out. And if you haven't finished making them yet, go ahead and do that and then come back. So I'm just gonna focus on the long ones for now, and I'm gonna pull the shorter ones aside just for a minute. And now we have to decide which color we want for the center front. I want pink. I like pink. So let's do pink. So I'm gonna pull blue number 2 over this way, and then I'm gonna also pull blue number 1 over this way so we don't get that confused. I marked where the center front is right here. So I'm gonna line up the middle of this long leaf onto the center front here, like that. And then I am going to pin it as centered as possible. Let's see if we can do that. And I'm going to alternate between all 3 colors and go all the way to the back, lining up at the raw edges up here with the straight edge of the top of the leaf. I'm going to do blue number 1 and blue number 2, and then pink, and then blue number 1. So the middle leaf is here, and then there's 4 long leaves on this side and another 4 long leaves on this side. So now you're just going to distribute these evenly, but make sure in the center back here that there's at least 5/8 of an inch here that is not pinned onto, because that's where we will be sewing the zipper. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other side. Okay, once we have those all nice and pinned, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and add a basting stitch all the way around the circle. Okay, now that we have that all basted, we are going to now pull out the rest of the leaves from pattern number 9. These are the shorter leaves, and we are going to pin them to the top here along the raw edge and alternate colors. So this is blue number 2, and I'm gonna put it right here between blue number 1 and pink. So I'm just gonna throw that there and have it overlaying evenly on top of these 2 leaves. I'm gonna do the same with blue number 1 on these 2, and then I'm going to do pink on this one. Blue number 2 is over here. Blue number 1, pink here, and then blue number 1, and then blue number 2. For the last leaf, this is a pink one. We are gonna set this aside. So there are 9 in total, but we're setting this one aside. So right now there are only 8 of the short leaves on here. You'll see why. We'll attach this later. And now that I have these all pinned, we're gonna add another basting stitch like the last one that we just did. All right, I have that all basted. I also added 2 gathering stitches at the top, one at 1/4 of an inch and one at 1/2 inch, because we will be gathering this up to fit the waistband here in a little bit. For now, I'm gonna set this aside and pull out the waistband. I have transferred the notches over and the dots over. And now on the unmarked side, go ahead and press up 5/8 of an inch. And after you press up 5/8 of an inch, we're going to trim that down to about 1/4 of an inch. Now we are going to attach the waistband to the skirt, right sides together and raw edges even. So the raw edge of the top of the skirt and the raw edge of the waistband, we are going to find the center and pin those. Okay, and then we will also match up the ends as well. Match it up to the center back and do the other side. There are notches back here which you can go ahead and match up. And then with the small dot that we marked on the waistband, this one right here, and on the other side, this is where the side seam will go. That, and then I'm going to gather to fit, because as you can see, there's a lot we need to gather. Now once you have gathered that and distributed the gathers evenly, go ahead and pin that down as well. Also, just a quick note, make sure to taper off that gathering at least 5/8 of an inch before the center back edge, just so that gathering doesn't get caught or doesn't mess us up when we are inserting the zipper. And now go ahead and stitch all along the waistband here, 5/8 of an inch. So once you have that sewn, go ahead and press this seam up towards the waistband. So it'll look like that. And if the seam is a little bit too bulky, you can always go in with your scissors and at a 45-degree angle, go ahead and trim it down, and it should decrease the bulk. To prepare the zipper, I have an invisible zipper right here. I have this really long one, but a 7-inch one will work out great. I just usually order longer ones and then shorten them down if I need to. So what I did is I took it over to the ironing board and I pressed the coils out, but not on top of the coils, if that makes sense, on a low iron setting. We can see the line right next to the coils where we're gonna stitch. You can insert the zipper however you'd like, but I will show you the method that I use. So I'm gonna take this side of the zipper and I'm gonna flip it to the wrong side, and then I'm going to place it about 1/8 of an inch under the fold point or the halfway mark of the waistband right here. And I'm going to place the coils where the 5/8 inch stitching will be. I'm going to say right there. And then pin all the way down to the notch if you're using a 7-inch zipper. I'm going to go a little bit further, but that's just because I have a longer zipper. So I'm going to pin that down like that, and then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and show you how I sew it. I'm going to move the needle all the way to that edge. For stitching it close to the coils, I'm just going to add a basting stitch right in the center of the zipper. Now that we have that stitched, we are going to stitch closer to those coils now. And take your time with this. Sometimes it likes to move a little bit. Now on the half of the zipper that we just sewed, I'm going to go ahead and mark here where the seam line is. This will help us to determine where to put the other one. So I'm going to zip it up again. I'm going to find where that mark was. I'm going to mark it on the other side like that. Then unzip it again. And then with this part of the zipper that we have not sewn yet, we're going to fold it like we did with the other side, and we're just going to do the exact same method that we did with the other one, except we're going to make sure that this lines up with the seam line right here. So we're going to put the zipper stopper 1/8 of an inch underneath the fold line. I'm going to place this right there on the seam line, and then I'm going to go down to the end and pin that, and then we're going to sew, instead of from the top to bottom, I'm just going to sew from the bottom to the top. And I have also done the same method of marking where this seam line will be with marking where the end of the zipper will be by transferring it from the other side so it all lays nice and neat. And then just repeat the sewing method for this side as well. So now when we zip it up, it should look like a pretty good invisible zipper. Yay! Now that we have the zipper in, we are going to flip it inside out. So the rest of the back seam that has not been sewn is here. So I went ahead and already serged it because that's just, again, how I like to finish things, but you can finish this edge however you'd like. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to start pinning down all the way down. And when I start sewing it, I'm gonna first start here with my zipper foot so I can get really close to the edge, start going a little bit, like a couple of inches, and then I'll switch to a normal sewing foot, and then I'll go all the way down. So I'm gonna pin it all the way down and match it with the bottom of the skirt. Bottom of the skirt is right here. All right, and once we've sewn that, we are going to press it open. So let's go ahead and sew this. And make sure that you don't get the zipper in this. You are going to start at the point where we left off with the zipper. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to my normal presser foot, switch the needle back to the center, and then I'm going to continue all the way down. Okay, I pressed the invisible zipper and the seam, and it's looking so good. Look at that. That's why they call it an invisible zipper. So next we are going to finish the waistband. So I am going to open it, and then I am going to open it up like this, and then I am going to fold this over, making sure that this is out of the way. I'm just going to pin this out of the way really quick. I'm going to fold it over, and so the fold line, the middle line, is at the fold, and then I'm going to match up the seam line with this pressed fold that we made earlier, and I'm going to pin that, and then you're going to take this to the sewing machine and stitch right here to the end 1/2 inch, and then you will clip the corner and then flip it inside out and then press. We now have those both sides flipped over, pressed, and ready to go. And now we're going to pin the pressed fold onto the seam of the waistband and the skirt, and we're going to pin that. So it should look something like this, and then we're going to take a needle and a thread, and we are going to slip stitch all the way around. Now we've got a full waistband, so good job. Now what we're gonna do is, what I've done here is press it down so it lays flat, and then I'm going to zip this up. And now with the space that we have up here, we are going to hand sew on a hook and an eye. And there we go. Okay, now we can pull out the last leaf that we set aside, and before we attach it, we are going to, at the top here, we're gonna mark 1/2 inch away from the raw edge, and then we're gonna flip it over so that the wrong side is up, and then we're going to press along the 1/2 inch line, and then we are going to meet that raw edge on the inner, so it's 1/4 inch rolled edge, and we're gonna stitch close to the edge once we've got that. Now we're going to add on the attachments, which we are going to be using snaps for this one. And for the leaf on the wrong side, we are going to attach 2 knobs, one right here at the very edge and on the other side. And we're going to hand sew that on. And then on the waistband, with the dots that you marked right here, you are going to sew on the socket of the snap, and then you'll be able to attach it. Now when putting on the skirt, you will just zip it up and then place the snaps together so that it looks like that. And now I'm going to put this on a hanger, and I'm going to let this hang overnight so that the bottom of the skirt stretches out and we can trim it if needed. And then after we let it hang out, we're going to work on the hem. Here we have the skirt, and underneath I have the petticoat that I made years ago. And underneath that, I have the hoop skirt that I've actually had for a long time. Let's just take a moment. Look at how the skirt is looking. Oh my goodness, y'all should be proud of yourselves. As I said before, we are going to trim the bottom after we've let it hang out for a little bit. So the benefit for me to having this tulle overlay, which is not part of the pattern by the way, I just wanted to use it because, you know, it looks more like the Barbie Swan Lake dress. The good thing about that though is that I don't have to necessarily measure everything out because the tulle didn't stretch. I can just trim along the line where the tulle lays. Another way to get rid of the bias stretch with the circle skirt is to just measure it manually and mark it, or you can use the pattern to lay it out and cut off the excess needed. Okay, now I'll show you how to do the rolled hem the way that the instructions tell you to do it. If you have another preference on how to do this, go ahead and do it. So first you're going to stitch with a long stitch length, 1/8 of an inch all the way around. The next thing that you're going to do is you are going to press up 1/4 of an inch. So this is pressing up towards the wrong side. And then once you press that up, since it's a circle skirt and the edges are curved, this part's going to really help out with those curves. So I'm going to take the ends of the long gathering stitch and ease some of that bulk in. And then once you have done that, you're going to stitch close to the edge all the way around. And then after that, you're going to press up another 1/8 of an inch. And once you've done that, go ahead and stitch close to the folded edge that's closest to the wrong side. Look who's here. Hi. Hi, sweet boy. Hi, what's up? That is it for the skirt. So if you are finished with that and are not making this collar, then you are done. Congratulations. If you are making the collar, let me show you how to do it. We're gonna first start out with 12 gauge wire. So the measurement that we will be taking to cut out from this is dependent on your shoulder, back of neck, and upper chest. So I can show you how to do that, but right now, I know for sure because I've made this before, that my measurement will be 29 inches, and that's width. We're gonna curve the ends inward, so I gave myself an extra 2 inches to do that. So the collar, of course, depends on how wide or long you want it to be. So the way that I'm going to measure it is I'm just going to let it naturally curve where it wants to, and I can adjust it as I go. So I like how wide it is here. As you can see, it kind of curves around the back to sit on the curve of it, which is nice. Yeah, I think right here is pretty good. And here is, it's 27 inches, which is perfect because I added 2 extra inches and that's 29 inches. So woohoo! And again, the 2 extra inches are to curve it inward so it doesn't poke you. And also it's to insert it into the bodice, and I will show you how to do that later. So yeah, once you've got that, I am going to pull out the wire that I cut out, and I'm going to, let me see, I'm gonna curve the end inwards about 1 inch. Oh my gosh, this is pretty sturdy wires, so be careful and don't hurt yourself. I think that's pretty good. Ooh. Okay, and now I'm going to add boning caps to the ends. This is my little cheat method on how to make sure that the ends don't scratch or stab you or anything like that, because that's not fun. So I am going to put a boning cap onto the top here. Then I'm going to take 2 pliers and just smush it down to connect this to the wire. And then we'll add electrical tape to make it stay. Yeah. Okay, now that we have the boning cap pressed on, we are going to get electrical tape. I'm just using white electrical tape, and we're just gonna secure that. Oh yeah, we really need to secure that by just rolling it around, making sure that the tape is attached to both the boning cap and the wire. And there you go. There's that one, and then there's the side. So that is ready for the next step. What I'm doing here is doing what these 2 instructions are showing you to do. If you need more of like a concrete visual for that, there's that, or I can show you as well. What's nice is that this is already curved, so I can just go ahead and kind of feel it out, see where I want it to go. Probably going to curve this area down a little bit more so it fits more of the shoulder. So let's see how this looks. It's looking a little bit better. Not as conformed as I want it to be, or maybe it could work. What does it look like? Oh, actually, yeah, that's not bad. I might curve this guy like that. Huzzah. That's actually looking pretty good. Okay, and once you're happy with the fit, we'll move on to the next step. All right, we're gonna set this aside for now, and then we're gonna pull out our millinery wire, which millinery wire is used for hat making, and it's either typically covered in cotton or rayon, so that's why it is white, and that's why it works for this. I think there are some that are covered in different colors, so I found this one on Etsy a very long time ago, so I still have it. So on instruction number 49, we are going to cut out these different lengths, and we're going to cut out 2 of each because it is mirrored on either side of the collar, of course. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Now, once you've got those all cut out, you're going to mark up 1 inch on each one like that. And then you are going to bend it on the line that you just marked. So we're going to bend it 1 inch like that, and you're going to straighten it as best as you can. So they'll all look like very elongated L's. You will repeat this on the rest of them. You know what? They actually kind of look like little legs. Like, look at this. Look at these little guys. Tag yourself. I'm these legs right here. Okay, now we're going to bring back the base again, and we're going to find the center of it. So I found the center of that by just measuring from the end of this loop all the way around to the other side. And then, oh, don't run away, little legs. And then I found the center here and marked it. And now I'm gonna mark 5/8 of an inch away from that center point on either side. Okay, and now we're gonna take the longest one, which is the 9-inch one. On those points, we are going to place the millinery wire onto the base like that. Here, let me zoom in a little bit. So we are going to place the wire onto this point like that, and we are going to use electrical tape to keep it on. I just cut a piece of electrical tape, and I'm just going to attach the millinery wire onto the base with it. And it's okay if it's not perfect. We are going to cover this up later. We're going to put this on the other one as well and tape this to the other 5/8 point from the center. So now where we measured away from the center 5/8 of an inch, we're going to measure from that point 1 3/8 of an inch. And then we are going to keep measuring away from the previous point 1 3/8 of an inch. So we have 5 extra points. And then we are going to repeat that on the other side here. So I will go ahead and finish that. That is 1 3/8. And now just double check that it looks even with the other side. And now starting with the longer piece, we are just going to work our way down and repeat the same method that we did with these 2 wires. So now we're going to take the 8.5-inch one, and we are going to tape it down on the next point that we marked. And now we're going to add the 7 3/4-inch pieces to the next one, and then the 6.5-inch pieces to the next one. Now the 5-inch pieces, and then the 3.5-inch pieces to the last 2 points. Okay, she's looking a little bit crazy right now, but this should be what yours looks like at this point. And now we're going to stabilize it. Bringing the millinery wire back out, we're going to cut 2 more pieces, one which will be 42 inches and the other one will be 34 inches. And these will create the inner and outer rims to help support the collar. So now once I have these pieces is ready to go, we are going to find the ends, and we are going to use the electrical tape to tape them together so it looks kind of like a double halo crown almost. And now we're going to tape the ends. Then we'll repeat that on the other side. So it looks like that. Woohoo! And now bringing the base back out. So the rims will be behind all of these straight pieces. We are going to tape the ends of the rims that we just made to about a quarter above where the end curves. We'll do one side and then we'll do the other. All right, and we're just gonna tape it about, woo, we're having fun here. About right here. That looks good. About right there. And now that's where we are at. So now taking jewelry wire or florist wire, you're gonna cut these into 2-inch pieces, and then you are going to join these together. So just like crisscross and wrap them around each joint part. And just to note, there will be about 1 inch above the top rim. So from here to here will be about 1 inch. So we are going to start out by slipping this under and making a U shape like this. And then we are going to flip that around again, but then adjust it so it comes out on the other joint side, and then create an X from that. And then just continue doing that until you run out of wire. And if the points are like too pointy, you don't want to have to touch them or press them down, you can use a little plier and just press it down. This is another great time to watch your favorite show in the background. Hi, pretty boy. Hi, handsome. How are you? Ta-da! There it is. All right, and there she is. I'm pretty sure I got it all even. I'm not sure. It looks even enough. Okay, so next we are going to secure these ends because we don't want them stabbing everybody, and especially not our head. So how we're going to do that is we're going to do it in a pretty way. So the way that I did it, that is on the cover of the pattern, and how I will be doing it today, is I'm using pieces of filigree that I just got from Amazon, and it came in a little pack, and it's pretty thin, it's metal, so it's bendable and it's durable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 of these, and with wrong sides together, I'm going to sandwich them on the ends and dab some hot glue in between just so that it stays in place. And then after I dab it with hot glue and after it dries, I'm going to take some of the jewelry wire, floral wire, whatever you have, to secure it, to slip it through. And since I'm using silver, it'll match quite nicely. A dab of hot glue on each on the wrong side there, and one right there. Press it together. Gonna bend it a little bit so it smushes and fits together pretty well. And I'll be using a piece of this, just weaving it through so it stays nice and tight even if the hot glue gives out. There we go. Okay, so now that that is all done, I actually want to add some of these embellishments on top of it because it looks more like Barbie Swan Lake. And you can add any additional decor if you want to, but you don't have to. I'm going to use this glue. Just make sure that you are using whatever glue that you use in a well-ventilated space. Now we have pattern pieces 15, 16, and 17, and these are the leaves or feathers, as you will, for the collar. And I went ahead and chose the colors that I was going to use. You can use whatever variety you want to. So for this one, I changed it up a little bit. I used the same color for this one just because I wanted a little bit more pink. I finished it the same way that we finished all the other leaves. I did not finish this edge because it will be encased in a bias binding. So go ahead and do that. All right, now I've set 15, 16, and 17 aside, and now I pulled out pattern piece number 18. And for this one, I went ahead and marked the center and also these 2 dots, and on the unmarked side I pressed up a 1/2 inch, and then once you pressed up a 1/2 inch, you are going to press the short edges 5/8 of an inch like that, and then you will stitch away from this folded edge 1/8 of an inch. All right, now we have that stitched. I have also taken this to the ironing board, and since it's bias tape, you can stretch. So I stretched it into a curve, and on the edge that is not folded, we're going to start pinning the leaves on right sides together. I'm going to start with the color that I want of number 15, and I'm going to place that in the center, and then I'm going to place the other two overlapping the first leaf like that, and then the other one like that. I'm matching up the edge of these leaves to the center to about the center of the first leaf that we put down. Then I'm going to pull out number 16, and then I'm going to place that down as well. And we are having these go pretty up close to each other because the ending point is the 2 dots that we marked. So just make sure that these do not pass the dot. And then I'm going to grab number 17 and going to place these down and have them end at the dot. And then you can rearrange these to how you want. I'm just going to go ahead and pin them down. And then we're going to sew from this dot to the other dot, 1/2 inch. Now that we have this stitched, it's looking pretty good. And now we're going to flip it over and take it to the ironing board. We're going to press that 1/2 inch that we just sewed all the way around, and also press 1/2 inch up on the ends that we did not sew as well. So now it is ready to go and be attached to the collar. All right, we have the frame of the collar here, and now we're going to pull out the leaves and the bias binding, and then we're going to place it on top. I still have that center marked, so I'm just going to place this here where the middle of the middle leaf is, and I'm just going to pin that. And then you're going to work this all the way around, and because I added a curve with the iron, it makes this a little bit easier. And then you're going to start pinning it, and then we'll pin this all the way around, or as best as you can. When I made my first collar, I used a combination of running stitches and slip stitches. I did a slip stitch around here, and then I did a running stitch up here through the wire pieces, which worked out pretty well. And then if you want to, at the very bottom, you can add an extra piece of electrical tape so that the bias binding doesn't move. And now once that is all hand sewn on, it's looking pretty good, right? But if we lift it up, the feathers will droop, so we need to tack those down. So the best way that I have found to secure these leaves is just to do little hand stitches on the places where the straight millinery wire pieces and the ribs intersect. So I'll just take the thread and needle and do something similar to how we joined these two wire pieces together by just crisscrossing and creating an X, but doing that with thread, and then just repeating that where the leaves need it to stand up. I might just do it on the top rim, and that might be enough. Now for the last step of being able to attach the collar to the bodice, we have the bodice back out here again. So we're going to end up having this here on the other side over here. So what I've done is I've marked 3 inches down from the side front seam and the front seam. Now this measurement may vary from person to person, so go ahead and just like quickly stitch it on at 3 inches, and if that doesn't work, adjust it if needed. But what we're going to do is we have 3-inch ribbon here. So the width of this is 3/8 of an inch, and it is 3 inches long. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, I'm going to crease it in half like that and have that crease and open back up. And then we are going to fold this end over towards the middle of the crease. And then we're going to fold the other one at the middle of the crease as well, like that. And then we're going to fold it again in half. So we have this little tab here, and I'm just going to quickly stitch one of the ends on like this. Oh, there goes another firework. And then we are going to place it right underneath that 3-inch mark right there. And then we're going to hand stitch that on either side, and make sure you don't just grab the lining fabric, also grab the interlining layer as well, which for me is the cups, which really helps to stabilize this because the collar will want to go every which way if it is just attached to the lining. Okay, so now that those two are matching, go ahead and test it out by trying it on, but let me show you how to insert it. So when it's on the person who's going to wear it, if this is facing them, you're going to slip this in to this tab like that, the other tab. That's how it'll look like when being worn. Yeah, look at you, you did it. That is awesome. This was not an easy tutorial. Now you are more than welcome to add any surface embellishments, any creative things that you want onto it, because this is your project. I'm probably gonna add these rhinestones with this glue because I think she deserves a little bit more sparkle. But you did it, you should be so proud of yourself. Good job, and thank you for making it this far. Make sure to twirl a lot in the ball gown for me.